The crystal chandelier above the dining table cast perfect light across the white linen, the expensive china, the polished silverware that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Simone stood in the hallway outside the dining room, her hand frozen on the doorknob, her heart hammering in her chest as her mother-in-law's voice carried through the crack in the door. "Brandon, honey, you need to face facts. She's holding you back. You could do so much better." Simone felt her stomach drop. She'd come back from the kitchen to grab her phone, but now she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Patricia's voice continued, sharp and certain, the way it always was when she made pronouncements about other people's lives. "Mom, I don't know," Brandon said, and Simone felt a small flutter of hope. But then he continued, "It's complicated." "What's complicated?" That was Gerald, Brandon's father, his voice gruff. "You married beneath you. We all knew it. We tried to tell you. But you were young and thought you were in love. Now you're 35 and your business is struggling and you're stuck with a wife who doesn't understand our world." Simone pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. Beneath him? She'd put Brandon through business school. She'd covered the down payment on this house. She'd loaned his parents money when they were facing foreclosure. And they thought she was beneath them? "Brittany is from a good family," Patricia said. "She understands what it takes to move in the right circles. And she clearly cares for you, Brandon. I've seen the way she looks at you at those company events." Brittany. The name landed like a slap. Brandon's co-worker. The blonde woman who always stood too close to him at parties, who touched his arm when she laughed, who looked at Simone with barely concealed contempt. "I know," Brandon said softly. Too softly. "I know, Mom." "Then you need to handle this," Gerald said. "Make it clean. Make it quick. Get her to leave quietly. The last thing you need is a messy divorce affecting your professional reputation." Simone's vision blurred. She'd been married to Brandon for 8 years. 8 years of putting his needs first, his family first, his career first. 8 years of swallowing her pride when Patricia made cutting remarks about her hair, her clothes, her family background. 8 years of pretending not to notice when Gerald introduced her to his friends as Brandon's wife, and nothing more, as if she didn't have her own career, her own accomplishments. 8 years of being the family bank account without them even realizing it. "What about the house?" Brandon asked. "The club membership? The cars?" Patricia laughed, a brittle sound. "Darling, those are in the family. She'll get nothing. You're a lawyer's son. Your father will make sure of it. We'll protect what's ours." Simone felt something cold settle in her chest. Not panic. Not fear. Something harder. Something clear. She turned and walked silently back to the kitchen. She picked up her phone with steady hands. She opened the voice recorder app she sometimes used for work meetings. She walked back to the hallway and stood outside the dining room door. "I just think we should do this soon," Patricia was saying. "Before she gets too comfortable. Before she thinks she has any real claim to this life we've built. This life we've built." The words echoed in Simone's head. The house they lived in? Simone had paid for it. The mortgage on Patricia and Gerald's McMansion across town? Simone had refinanced it when they were 3 months from losing everything. Gerald's car? Simone had co-signed the loan. Patricia's country club membership? Simone paid the annual fees because Gerald's consulting business had dried up 5 years ago. This life they'd built. On her back. With her money. While treating her like she was lucky to be there. "Son, you deserve happiness," Gerald said. "And if that happiness is with Brittany, then that's what matters. Your mother and I will support you. We'll help you handle Simone." Handle Simone. As if she were a problem to be solved. An obstacle to be removed. Simone heard Brandon sigh. "You're right," he said. "You're both right. I'll talk to her. This weekend. I'll tell her it's not working." "Good boy," Patricia said. "And Brandon? Don't let her manipulate you with tears or emotions. You're doing what's best for your future. Remember that." Simone stopped the recording. She had 17 minutes of audio. 17 minutes of her husband and his parents planning her removal from their lives. 17 minutes of them discussing her like she was furniture they wanted to replace. She walked back to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing was steady. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window above the sink. She was 33 years old. She was the vice president of operations at one of the largest logistics companies in the Southeast. She had a trust fund from her grandmother that she'd never touched, letting it grow for years. She had savings and investments and a 401k that would make most people weep with envy. And she had been playing the role of grateful wife for 8 years while funding every aspect of her husband's and his parents' comfortable lives. Simone finished her water. She set the glass in the sink. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she needed. Diane Rodriguez, attorney at law, specializing in divorce and family law. They'd gone to college together. They'd stayed friends even when Simone's world had shrunk to just Brandon and his family. Simone sent a text. Need to meet. Soon as possible. It's time. The response came back in 30 seconds. Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. My office. I'll clear my schedule. Simone heard footsteps in the hallway. She deleted the text thread, switched her phone to silent, and turned just as Brandon walked into the kitchen. He looked guilty. He couldn't quite meet her eyes. Hey, he said. You've been gone a while. Everything okay? Simone smiled. It didn't reach her eyes, but Brandon didn't notice. He never noticed. Everything's fine, she said. Just tired. Long week at work. Yeah, Brandon said. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. Listen, I was thinking. Maybe this weekend we could talk. About us. About the future. Sure, Simone said. Her voice was calm. Easy. That sounds good. Brandon looked relieved. He probably thought she had no idea what was coming. He probably thought she'd cry and beg and make it difficult. He probably thought he was in control. He had no idea that his whole world was about to collapse. That the foundation he'd built his life on wasn't his parents' old money or his law degree or his business connections. It was her. It had always been her. And she was about to walk away and take everything with her. Simone didn't sleep that night. She lay next to Brandon in their king-sized bed, the expensive sheets she'd purchased smooth against her skin, and stared at the ceiling. Brandon snored softly beside her, completely untroubled. Why would he be troubled? In his mind, he was making a smart decision, upgrading to a better model, following his parents' advice like he always did. At 5 a.m, Simone gave up on sleep. She got up, showered, and dressed in one of her power suits. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, paired with cream silk blouse and her lucky heels. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she become so tired? When had the light gone out of her eyes? She knew the answer. It had been gradual. Year by year, comment by comment, slight by slight. Patricia's observations about her hair being too natural, or her clothes being a bit much. Gerald's suggestions that she might want to tone down her ambition at work because it made Brandon look bad. Brandon's increasing distance, his late nights at the office, his phone face down on tables, his passwords suddenly changed. She'd ignored it all. She told herself she was being paranoid. She'd worked harder, achieved more, brought home bigger bonuses, and poured everything into making their lives comfortable. Into making his parents' lives comfortable. And they'd all decided she wasn't good enough. Simone left the house before Brandon woke up. She stopped at a coffee shop and got a large black coffee and a muffin she didn't eat. At exactly 8 a.m, she walked into Diane's office building downtown. Diane was waiting in the lobby. She looked exactly like she had in college, except now she wore expensive suits and her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. She took one look at Simone's face and pulled her into a hug. Whatever happened, Diane said quietly, we're going to handle it. Come on. They went up to Diane's office on the 15th floor. It was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Diane closed the door and gestured to the leather chairs in front of her desk. Tell me everything, Diane said. Simone did. She started with last night's conversation and played the recording. She watched Diane's face darken as she listened to Brandon and his parents casually discussing how to remove Simone from their lives. When the recording ended, Diane sat back in her chair. Okay, she said. That's useful. But before we get into legal strategy, I need to know the full situation. The financial situation. Because I remember you, Simone. I remember you paid your own way through college while working 2 jobs. I remember you talking about your grandmother's trust fund. And I remember thinking when you married Brandon that you were way out of his league. So tell me, what's the real financial picture here? Simone opened her laptop and pulled up her files. She'd spent the hours between midnight and dawn organizing everything. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, loan documents, every receipt, every payment, every transaction from the last 8 years. She showed Diane the house deed. Simone's name only. She'd purchased it outright with money from her trust fund before the wedding, then added Brandon's name after they married because he'd been hurt that she didn't trust him. Do you have access to his phone? His computer? His credit card statements? His credit cards are joint accounts with me, Simone said slowly. I can see all the transactions online. Then tonight when you get home, check them. Look for patterns. Hotels, restaurants, unusual purchases. Document everything. Take screenshots. And if you can get into his phone or email, even better. But only if you can do it without him knowing. Simone nodded. She felt like she was in a spy movie. But this was her life. This was her marriage. And she needed to know the truth. That night, after Brandon fell asleep, Simone took his phone from the nightstand. She knew his password. He'd never changed it because he never thought she'd check. She opened his messages and went straight to Brittany's name. The messages made her want to throw up. Months of them. Intimate conversations. Plans to meet. Complaints about Simone. She doesn't understand me like you do. I wish I'd met you first. Soon. I promise. Soon we'll be together. There were pictures. Not explicit ones but intimate enough. Brittany in Brandon's office after hours. Brittany and Brandon at a restaurant Simone recognized. They'd told her he was at a business dinner. The timestamp on the photo was the same night. Simone forwarded the most damning messages to her own phone, then deleted the sent messages from Brandon's phone. She put his phone back exactly where it had been. She went to the bathroom and threw up as quietly as she could. When she came back to bed, Brandon rolled over and threw his arm across her waist. "Love you," he mumbled, half asleep. Simone stared at the ceiling and said nothing. The dinner invitation came on Thursday. Patricia called Simone's cell phone while she was at work, her voice saccharine sweet, completely different from the cold contempt Simone had heard 3 nights ago through that dining room door. "Simone, darling, I'm planning a family dinner for Saturday night. Just the 4 of us. I thought it would be nice to have a proper meal together. You've been so busy with work lately." Simone felt her stomach tighten. This was it. This was when they'd planned to tell her to leave. She could refuse. She could call in sick. She could avoid the whole thing. But she wouldn't. She needed to hear what they'd say to her face. She needed to record it, document it, add it to the growing file Diane was building. And she needed to look them in the eyes and know that soon, very soon, they'd understand exactly what they'd done. "That sounds lovely, Patricia," Simone said, keeping her voice warm. "What time?" 7 o'clock. "And Simone? Dress nicely, won't you? I'm inviting the Hendersons from next door. They're such influential people in the community." Of course. Patricia wanted an audience. She wanted witnesses who were the right kind of people to see Simone put in her place. Simone felt anger flash hot in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "I'll be there," she said. She hung up and immediately texted Diane. The response came back fast. "Perfect. Record everything. I'll prep you on what to say and what not to say. Can you meet for lunch?" They met at a quiet restaurant downtown. Diane walked Simone through the strategy like a general planning a battle. Let them talk. Let them say everything they want to say. Ask questions but don't get defensive. Don't cry. Don't argue. Stay calm. Get them to be as specific as possible about what they want from you. And whatever you do, don't reveal that you know about the affair or the financial situation. "Why not?" Simone asked. "Because we want them to be comfortable. We want them to say things they'll regret later. We want them to think they have all the power. When we serve the divorce papers next week, I want them to be completely blindsided. The element of surprise is on our side. Let's keep it that way." Simone nodded. She felt like she was preparing for war. In a way she supposed she was. Saturday night arrived cold and clear. Simone dressed carefully in a simple black dress, elegant but not showy. She did her makeup with precision. She pulled her hair back in a sleek ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a woman who was ready for battle. Brandon was nervous on the drive over. He kept adjusting his tie, clearing his throat, glancing at her sideways. "My mom's been talking about wanting to have a serious conversation," he said. "About our future. About the family." "Okay," Simone said mildly. "I figured there was something. Your mom doesn't usually invite the neighbors to family dinners." "Yeah." Brandon drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. "Listen, Simone, whatever happens tonight, just remember that my parents mean well. They care about me. About us. They just want what's best." Simone felt something cold settle in her chest. He was already making excuses for them. Already preparing her to accept whatever they were about to do. "Of course," she said. They arrived at Patricia and Gerald's house at exactly 7. The McMansion gleamed in the twilight, its columns and portico a monument to excess. Simone looked at it and thought about the mortgage payment that had come out of her account just yesterday. $4,000. Every month for 3 years. The Hendersons were already there, sipping wine in the living room. Patricia greeted Simone with air kisses and a tight smile. Gerald shook Brandon's hand and clapped him on the shoulder, barely acknowledging Simone. The Hendersons were a couple in their 60s, both perfectly coiffed and clearly wealthy. They looked at Simone with polite interest and nothing more. Dinner was elaborate. Patricia had gone all out. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, expensive wine. She kept the conversation light through the meal, asking the Hendersons about their recent cruise, discussing the upcoming country club gala, mentioning Brandon's business success. Simone ate mechanically and said little. She had her phone in her purse, recording app already running. After dessert, Patricia stood up. "Why don't we have coffee in the living room?" she said. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, if you'll excuse us for just a moment, I need to speak with my son and daughter-in-law privately. Family business, you understand." The Hendersons nodded graciously and moved to the living room with their coffee. Patricia led Simone, Brandon, and Gerald to the study. It was Gerald's domain, all dark wood and leather chairs and walls lined with law books. Gerald closed the door. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patricia sat in one of the leather chairs and crossed her legs. Gerald stood behind her like a sentinel. Brandon sat on the couch and gestured for Simone to sit beside him. She did, keeping her posture perfect, her hands folded in her lap. "Simone," Patricia began, her voice taking on that cold, certain tone Simone had heard through the dining room door. "We've asked you here because we need to have an honest conversation. About you and Brandon. About this marriage. About the future." "Okay," Simone said calmly. Patricia blinked as if she'd expected more reaction. She continued. "The truth is, dear, this isn't working. You and Brandon come from very different backgrounds. Different worlds. And while we tried to be supportive when you married, it's become clear that you're not suited for the life Brandon needs to lead." "I see," Simone said. "Can you be more specific about what you mean?" Gerald stepped forward. "What my wife means," he said, his voice gruff and dismissive, "is that Brandon needs a partner who understands his social standing, his professional obligations. Someone who can help him advance, not hold him back." "Hold him back how?" Simone asked. She kept her voice interested, curious, not defensive. "Your work," Patricia said. "You're so focused on your own career. You're never available for the social events that matter. You don't prioritize Brandon's networking opportunities. And frankly, Simone, your background just isn't appropriate for the circles Brandon needs to move in." "My background?" Simone repeated. "You mean because I'm black?" The room went silent. Patricia's face flushed. "That's not what I meant at all," she said quickly. "Don't put words in my mouth. I'm talking about class. About breeding. About understanding how to behave in polite society. And you don't think I understand that?" Simone asked. "We think you're trying," Gerald said. "But some things can't be learned. They're bred into you. And you simply don't have that background." Simone looked at Brandon. He was staring at his hands. Not defending her. Not saying a word. "Brandon?" Simone said softly. "Is this how you feel too?" Brandon cleared his throat. He still wouldn't look at her. "I think," he said slowly, "that maybe we rushed into things. Maybe we weren't as compatible as we thought. And maybe it's time to admit that this isn't working." "Because I'm not good enough for your family," Simone said. "It wasn't a question." "Because you're not right for me," Brandon corrected. But it amounted to the same thing. Patricia leaned forward. "We're not trying to be cruel, Simone. We're trying to be realistic. Brandon deserves someone who can truly be his partner in every sense. Someone who understands what it means to be part of this family. And we don't think that's you." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Simone asked. "We're asking you to leave," Gerald said bluntly. "To file for divorce. To do it quietly and quickly. We'll be fair in the settlement. You'll get a reasonable amount. But this needs to end." "A reasonable amount of what?" Simone asked. "Of marital assets," Patricia said. "Brandon's lawyer will handle the details. But we'll make sure you're not left destitute. We're not monsters." Simone felt hysterical laughter bubble up in her throat. She swallowed it down. "And what if I don't want a divorce?" she asked. The three of them exchanged glances. "Then we'll make your life very difficult," Gerald said. "We have resources. We have connections. We can make sure your professional reputation suffers. We can make sure you're pushed out of your social circles. We can make this as ugly as it needs to be. Or you can leave gracefully and we can all move on with our lives." "Is there someone else?" Simone asked, looking at Brandon. "Is that what this is about?" Brandon finally looked at her. "No," he said. But she could see the lie in his eyes. "This is about us. About the fact that we don't work anymore." Simone nodded slowly. She stood up. All three of them looked surprised. "Thank you for being honest," she said. "I need some time to think about this, to process what you're saying." "Don't take too long," Patricia said. "We'd like this handled soon, before it becomes more complicated." "Of course," Simone said. She looked at each of them in turn. Patricia, smug and certain. Gerald, dismissive and cold. Brandon, guilty but not guilty enough to stop this. She left the study. She walked through the living room, said gracious goodbyes to the Hendersons, and went out to her car. She didn't wait for Brandon. She drove herself home, her hands steady on the wheel, her breathing even. When she got home, she went straight to her laptop. She downloaded the recording from her phone. She had 43 minutes of audio. Every word, every insult, every threat. She emailed it to Diane with a simple subject line, "It's time." Then she poured herself a glass of wine, sat on her couch in the house she owned, and smiled. Simone took Monday off work. She told her assistant she needed a personal day and would be unavailable. Then she went to Diane's office and spent 6 hours preparing for war. Diane had assembled a team. Her paralegal, Rebecca, had organized every document into color-coded binders. Her financial consultant, James, had created detailed spreadsheets showing every payment, every transfer, every contribution Simone had made over 8 years. And Diane herself had drafted a preliminary divorce petition that was 23 pages long. "Let's walk through everything," Diane said. They sat in her conference room, documents spread across the massive table like pieces of a puzzle. "The house first. It's in your name only. You purchased it before the marriage with money from your trust fund. Brandon was added to the deed after you married, but that was a gift, not a purchase. In Georgia, gifts of property during marriage can be reclaimed under certain circumstances. We're going to argue that you want the house and you're entitled to it. What are his chances of getting half?" Simone asked. "Minimal. The burden of proof is on him to show he contributed to the value. You didn't? He hasn't paid the mortgage. He hasn't paid for renovations. His name is on the deed, but his hands are empty. We'll offer him a buyout of his share at a severely reduced rate based on lack of contribution, but my guess is once we show the full financial picture, he'll walk away from it." James pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. "The business investment," he said. "This is where the postnuptial agreement really shines. When Brandon's firm was failing, you invested $200,000. In exchange, he signed an agreement that the investment was yours alone, not marital property. He gets to keep the business such as it is, but you get your investment back plus 20% as stipulated in the agreement. That's $240,000 he owes you. Can he pay that?" Simone asked. James shook his head. "No. His business has $12,000 in its operating account. His personal savings have $8,000. Unless he sells the business, he can't pay you. We'll get a judgment, and if he can't pay immediately, we'll set up a payment plan with interest. But Simone, here's the thing. Without your continued investment, his business is going to fold within 6 months. I ran the numbers. He's been operating at a loss for 18 months. You've been covering the shortfall without realizing it. Once you stop, he's done." Simone felt a flicker of guilt. She pushed it down. Brandon had chosen this. He'd chosen to betray her, to let his parents insult her, to plan her removal from his life. His business problems were his own. "What about his parents' mortgage?" Simone asked. Diane flipped through her legal pad. "That's trickier because it involves third parties. You refinanced their mortgage in your name 3 years ago. They were in default and facing foreclosure. You paid off their old mortgage and took out a new one in your name only. Legally, the debt is yours. The house is in their name. You're essentially paying their mortgage as a gift." "Can I stop?" Simone asked. "Yes. You're not legally obligated to continue paying a debt on a house you don't own. However, if you stop paying, the mortgage company will come after you because it's your debt. Your credit will be affected. You'll have to either let it default or negotiate with the mortgage company to transfer the loan back to Patricia and Gerald, which they won't qualify for because they have no income and bad credit. So if I stop paying, their house goes into foreclosure again." "Yes." Simone thought about Patricia's face Saturday night. The contempt. The certainty that Simone was beneath them. "I want to stop paying," she said, "but I want to do it legally. I want to give them notice. I want everything documented so they can't come back and say I sabotaged them." "We'll draft a formal letter," Diane said. "We'll state that you'll make one final payment, giving them 30 days to make other arrangements. We'll note that you've been paying their mortgage for 3 years out of generosity and that generosity is now ending. We'll send it certified mail with return receipt. They'll have documentation. They'll have time. What they do with it is their choice. Good, Simone said. Rebecca pulled out another binder. Credit cards, she said. There are 5 joint credit cards. Total balance of $43,000. Based on the statements we reviewed, Brandon is responsible for $31,000 of that. His clothes, his expenses, meals with Brittany that he charged to the joint card. We'll argue that he's responsible for his portion of the debt. And my portion? Simone asked. The $12,000 that's yours you'll take responsibility for. We'll have each of you take your own debt as part of the divorce settlement. They went through every asset, every debt, every complication. The cars, the retirement accounts, the furniture, the art on the walls. Every piece of their shared life was dissected and assigned value and ownership. By the end of the day, Simone felt exhausted but clear. Diane had the divorce petition ready to file. They had a complete financial declaration prepared. They had a proposed settlement that was detailed and fair and completely destroyed the narrative that Brandon and his parents had tried to create. When do we file? Simone asked. Tomorrow, Diane said. We file with the court tomorrow morning. Then we serve Brandon at his office tomorrow afternoon. We serve his parents at their home with the mortgage notice at the same time. We hit them all at once before they have time to prepare or hide assets. They're going to be angry, Simone said. They're going to be shocked, Diane corrected. They have no idea what's coming. They think you're going to quietly leave and accept whatever scraps they offer. They think you're powerless. They think the house is theirs, the money is theirs, that everything you've built is somehow theirs by right. Tomorrow they learn the truth. Simone took a deep breath. Do it, she said. That night she went home to the house that was hers. Brandon wasn't there yet. He'd been staying late at the office, probably with Brittany. Simone didn't care anymore. She walked through the rooms, seeing them clearly for the first time in years. The living room with its expensive furniture that she'd chosen and paid for. The kitchen with its marble counters and top-of-the-line appliances that she'd selected. The master bedroom with its walk-in closet full of Brandon's designer suits that she'd bought him for birthdays and anniversaries. This was her house, her home, and she was taking it back. She went to her laptop and opened her financial software. She'd already moved most of her money to new accounts that Brandon didn't have access to. Her trust fund, her savings, her investments. All secure. All protected. Now she just needed to cut off his access to what remained. She started with the joint checking account. She transferred out everything except $1,000. She left that small amount so he could access cash if he needed it, but the bulk of the money, her money, was now safe. She went through the joint credit cards. She called each company and removed herself as an authorized user on the ones that were primarily his. She reduced the credit limits on the ones where she was the primary holder. She left enough that he wouldn't be stranded, but she made sure he couldn't rack up debt in her name. It took 3 hours. When she was done, she'd effectively separated their finances. Brandon wouldn't realize it yet. The changes wouldn't show up for a few days. But by the time he was served with divorce papers, he'd already be cut off from her money. Simone logged out of her accounts. She closed her laptop. She went upstairs and packed a suitcase with her essentials. Her clothes, her jewelry, her important documents. She loaded the suitcase in her car. Tomorrow, after Brandon was served, she'd come back with movers and pack everything else. But tonight she wanted to be ready. Brandon came home at 11. He found her in the living room reading a book, acting normal. Hey, he said. You look tired. Guilty. Sorry I'm late. Big project at work. No problem, Simone said. She smiled at him. How was your day? They made small talk for 20 minutes. He asked if she'd thought about what his parents said Saturday night. She told him she was still processing. He looked relieved, probably thinking he had more time before he had to deal with her emotions. He had no idea he had less than 12 hours. The next morning, Tuesday, Simone woke up before dawn. She dressed for work in one of her best suits, deep burgundy with a crisp white shirt. She looked like power. She felt like power. Today was the day everything changed. Brandon was still asleep when she left. She didn't wake him. She just took her purse, her laptop bag, and walked out of the house for what would be the last time as a married woman living there. She drove straight to Diane's office. The legal team was already there, caffeinated and focused. The divorce petition had been filed with the court at 8 a.m. when the clerk's office opened. Now it was 9:30 and they were preparing for service. The process server is on his way to Brandon's office, Diane said. He'll arrive around 11, during the lunch rush when Brandon usually goes out. We want witnesses. We want this to be official and impossible to deny. And his parents? Simone asked. Second process server is heading to their house now. They'll be served with your letter about the mortgage and with a copy of the divorce petition showing the full financial disclosure. They need to see what you've been paying. They need to understand what they're about to lose. Rebecca handed Simone a folder. These are copies for you. Your divorce petition, the financial declaration, everything. I'm also giving you keys to your new place. My new place? Simone asked. Diane smiled. I told you to be ready to move. I found you a furnished apartment in Midtown. High-rise, secure building, month-to-month lease. It's in your name only. I had your things moved there this morning. The suitcase you packed last night plus some basics. You're not going back to that house until Brandon is out and you have full legal possession. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet, Diane said. This is about to get very ugly. Brandon's going to call. His parents are going to call. They're going to be angry and confused and possibly threatening. Do not answer any calls. Do not respond to any texts. Do not engage. Every communication goes through me now. Understood? Understood, Simone said. At exactly 11:15, Diane's phone rang. It was the process server. It's done, he said. Served Brandon Hayes at his office, Hayes Consulting. He was with a female colleague. What? They were walking out to lunch together. He's been officially served. Diane thanked him and hung up. She looked at Simone. It's done. He knows. Simone's phone started ringing 30 seconds later. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. She silenced it. A text came through. What the hell is this? Call me right now. Another text. Simone, this is insane. We need to talk. Another. You can't just leave. This is my house too. Another. My lawyer is going to destroy you for this. Simone handed her phone to Rebecca. Hold this, she said. I don't want to see it. At noon, Diane got a call from the second process server. Patricia and Gerald had been served. Patricia had reportedly started screaming that there was some mistake, that Simone was clearly lying about the financials, that they'd sue for fraud. Gerald had been silent, just staring at the documents. At 12:30, Patricia called Diane's office directly. Diane put the call on speaker so Simone could hear. This is a lie, Patricia said without preamble. Her voice was shrill. That girl hasn't paid for anything. Brandon takes care of everything. This financial declaration is fraudulent. Mrs. Hayes, Diane said calmly, everything in that declaration is backed up by bank statements, canceled checks, and official records. If you'd like to review them, I can provide copies. But I assure you, every number is accurate. Then Brandon paid for it with his money, Patricia insisted. Whatever accounts she's showing, that's his money going into them. Actually, it's not. Brandon's business accounts and personal accounts are separate. We have those records too. I can show you that his business has been operating at a loss. I can show you that Simone has been covering that loss. Would you like me to send that documentation as well? There was silence on the other end. Then, you're saying we're going to lose our house. I'm saying that Simone has been paying your mortgage for 3 years without your knowledge. She's now stopping that payment. You have 30 days to make other arrangements. I suggest you contact your mortgage company immediately. Patricia's voice turned venomous. She did this on purpose. She tricked us. She wanted to control us. Mrs. Hayes, Simone refinanced your mortgage when you were 3 months from foreclosure. She saved your house. She's been paying $4,000 a month out of her own pocket. For 3 years. That's $144,000 she's paid toward a house she doesn't own. She did it because she thought you were family. She's stopping because you told her she wasn't good enough for that family. Those are the facts. Patricia hung up. The dial tone was loud in the quiet office. Simone let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She really had no idea, she said. None of them did, Diane said. That's what makes this so perfect. They thought they had all the power. They thought they were dismissing some woman who'd been lucky to marry into their family. They had no idea they were cutting off the hand that fed them. By 2 p.m., Simone's phone had 53 missed calls and over 100 text messages. Brandon, Patricia, Gerald, even some of Brandon's business associates. Everyone wanted to know what was happening, wanted to convince her she was making a mistake, wanted to negotiate. Diane drafted a single response email that went to Brandon's lawyer, who'd been hastily retained that morning. It said, all communication regarding the Hayes divorce will go through this office. Direct contact with Ms. Hayes is not permitted. Please review the divorce petition and proposed settlement. We're open to reasonable negotiation but will not deviate from the core facts. Ms. Hayes owns the marital home, is owed the business investment per the postnuptial agreement, and is terminating financial support for Brandon's parents' mortgage. These are non-negotiable. At 5 p.m., Diane drove Simone to her new apartment. It was on the 23rd floor of a sleek high-rise in Midtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. The furniture was modern and minimalist. It was nothing like the house she'd shared with Brandon, with its traditional decor chosen to please Patricia's tastes. It was hers. Truly hers. I hired movers for tomorrow, Diane said. They'll go to the house and pack your personal belongings. Your clothes, your books, your files from your home office. Brandon's been ordered to allow access. He doesn't have to be there, but he can't interfere. We'll have everything moved here within 24 hours. Simone walked to the windows and looked out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. She felt strange. Not happy exactly. Not sad. Just clear. Like fog had lifted and she could finally see the landscape properly. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait, Diane said. Brandon has 30 days to respond to the divorce petition. His lawyer will try to negotiate. We'll hold firm on what's yours. The house, the business investment, your personal property. We'll negotiate on some of the smaller stuff, but we won't back down on the big things. My guess is this will be settled within 60 days. He doesn't have money for a long legal fight. His parents definitely don't. And then? And then you're free, Diane said simply. That night, alone in her new apartment, Simone ordered takeout from a Thai restaurant she loved that Brandon had always refused to try. She ate it sitting on the floor by the windows watching the city below. She thought about her grandmother, who died 5 years ago and left her the trust fund that had made all of this possible. Her grandmother had been a seamstress who'd built her own business from nothing, who'd believed that women should never depend on anyone else for their security. Thank you, Grandma, Simone whispered to the empty apartment. You taught me to stand on my own. I just forgot for a while. But I remember now. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Brandon, somehow still getting through despite her blocks. I love you. I'm sorry. Please come home. We can fix this. Simone deleted it without responding. Then she blocked his number properly this time. She wasn't going back. Not to him. Not to that house. Not to that life where she made herself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. She was done shrinking. She was done paying for the privilege of being disrespected. She was done funding other people's dreams while they dismissed her own. She was done. And she was finally free. The first week after leaving was chaos. Simone went to work every day, buried herself in meetings and reports and strategic planning sessions. Her colleagues noticed she seemed different, more focused, sharper somehow. She didn't tell anyone about the divorce yet. That would come later. For now she just worked. But outside of work, the storm was raging. Diane forwarded her the messages from Brandon's lawyer. They started aggressive, demanding that Simone return to the house, accusing her of abandonment and financial manipulation. When Diane sent back the full documentation showing every payment, every contribution, every way that Simone had been the financial foundation of their marriage, the tone changed. The new messages were more conciliatory, asking for negotiation, suggesting mediation. They're realizing they have no case, Diane told Simone during their weekly strategy meeting. Brandon's lawyer has seen the postnup. He's seen the house deed. He's seen the business records. He knows Brandon can't fight this and win. Now they're trying to minimize damage. What are they offering? Simone asked. They want you to take the house and your personal property, but they want to waive the business investment payback. They're claiming the business has no value, that forcing Brandon to pay $240,000 will bankrupt him. Will it? Simone asked. Probably, Diane said honestly. But that's not your problem. He signed a contract. He took your money when his business was failing. He agreed to pay it back. The fact that he can't isn't your responsibility. Simone thought about it. She thought about Brandon, who'd sat silent while his parents insulted her. Who'd planned to discard her for someone they considered more appropriate. Who'd been having an affair for months while spending her money. No deal, she said. He pays what he owes. If he has to sell the business, he sells it. If he has to get a payment plan, he gets one. But I don't waive a penny. Meanwhile, Patricia and Gerald were drowning. Diane had sources at the mortgage company who confirmed they'd received the 30-day notice that payments were stopping. Patricia had called the mortgage company trying to refinance. She'd been denied immediately. Their credit was terrible. They had no income except Gerald's small pension. The house was underwater. They owed more than it was worth because they'd refinanced so many times before Simone saved them. They had 23 days before the next payment was due. If it wasn't made, they'd be in default. Patricia called Diane's office 6 times a day. Diane stopped taking her calls. She sent a letter stating that Simone had no legal obligation to them and all communication should cease. Patricia sent a response, handwritten and desperate, begging Simone to reconsider, claiming they were family, that they'd always supported her. Simone read the letter and felt nothing. "They never supported me," she told Diane. "They tolerated me. They used me. And the second they decided I wasn't useful anymore, they tried to throw me away. Let them figure it out themselves." The country club suspended Patricia's membership for non-payment. The dues were $7,000 annually, paid quarterly. Simone's automatic payment had been scheduled for next week. When Simone canceled it, the club sent a courtesy notice to Patricia, then suspended her when she couldn't pay within 5 days. Patricia showed up at Simone's office. Security called Simone from the lobby. "There's a Mrs. Patricia Hayes here demanding to see you. She's quite agitated." "Don't let her up," Simone said. "Tell her I'm not available. If she doesn't leave, call the police." Patricia left, but not before screaming in the lobby that Simone was destroying their family, that she was vindictive and cruel, that she tricked them all. Several of Simone's colleagues heard about it. Her boss, Terrence, called her into his office. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. "I heard there was some kind of scene in the lobby." Simone took a breath. She trusted Terrence. He'd been her mentor for 5 years. "I'm getting divorced," she said. "It's messy. That was my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law. She's not handling it well. Do you need time off?" Terrence asked. "Do you need security?" "Whatever you need, just tell me." "I need to work," Simone said honestly. "I need normal. This job is the one thing in my life that makes sense right now." Terrence nodded. "Then work. But Simone, if you need anything, my door is open. And I'm going to have security put a note in the system that Mrs. Hayes is not allowed in the building. Just to be safe." "Thank you," Simone said. 2 weeks after she left, Brandon's business collapsed. Without Simone's monthly capital injection, he couldn't make payroll. He couldn't pay his office rent. He had to lay off his 3 employees. He tried to get a business loan but was denied. His credit was maxed out. His personal accounts were empty. Diane got a frantic call from his lawyer. "My client is in financial crisis. He needs emergency relief. Can we at least discuss temporary support while we work out the divorce?" "Spousal support?" Diane asked, her voice incredulous. "Your client was having an affair while planning to divorce my client. Your client's parents ordered my client out of the family. Your client spent marital funds on his mistress. And now he wants my client to support him financially during the divorce." "He has no income," Brandon's lawyer said. "Then he should get a job," Diane replied and hung up. At 3 weeks, Patricia called from a hospital. Gerald had had a heart attack. She left a sobbing voicemail on Diane's line. Please tell Simone. He's in intensive care. But don't know if he'll make it. Please, she has to know. We need her. We need help with the medical bills." Diane forwarded the voicemail to Simone. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Simone listened to Patricia's sobs. She felt a pang of sympathy. She didn't hate Gerald. She didn't even hate Patricia, really. But she couldn't keep saving people who'd made it clear they didn't value her. "Send flowers to the hospital," Simone said. "Something nice but not extravagant. Include a card that says, 'Wishing you a full recovery.' That's all." "Not going to visit?" Diane asked. "If I visit, Patricia will corner me. She'll beg. She'll cry. She'll try to make me feel guilty. And I can't be in that position. I'm not strong enough yet. Send the flowers. That's more than they gave me when they told me I wasn't good enough for their family." The flowers were sent. Patricia called again, this time angry. "Flowers? You send flowers? Gerald could die and you send flowers? What kind of person are you?" Diane sent a formal response. "Miss Simone Hayes, to be reverted to her maiden name, has expressed her concern for Mr. Gerald Hayes' health and wishes him well. However, she is not obligated to provide financial or personal support during this time. Please direct any medical billing concerns to your insurance company and consider reaching out to other family members for assistance." Gerald survived the heart attack. He was released from the hospital after a week with instructions for medication and lifestyle changes. The hospital bill was $87,000. Their insurance covered $40,000. They owed $47,000 they didn't have. Patricia sent another letter. This one wasn't begging. It was vicious. She called Simone every name she could think of. She said Simone had planned this from the beginning, had married Brandon to control them, had intentionally sabotaged their lives. She threatened to sue for fraud, for elder abuse, for anything her lawyer would agree to. Diane sent back a 2-page letter calmly explaining exactly why none of those lawsuits would succeed. She attached documentation of every insult Patricia had ever made to Simone, every dismissive comment, every attempt to undermine her. She included the recording from the study where they told Simone to leave. She made it crystal clear that if Patricia sued, Simone would countersue for emotional distress and harassment. Patricia stopped sending letters. At 4 weeks, Brandon tried one more time. He showed up at Simone's apartment building. The doorman called up. "There's a Mr. Brandon Hayes in the lobby. He says he's your husband." "Tell him I'm not home," Simone said. "And tell him not to come back." Brandon stood in the lobby for 2 hours. Simone watched him from her window 23 floors up. He looked smaller somehow. Defeated. He kept checking his phone, probably hoping she'd change her mind and come down. She didn't. Eventually he left. The divorce papers were signed on day 32. Brandon agreed to everything. He had no choice. He took the debt from the joint credit cards. He agreed to the business payback on a payment plan of $2,000 a month until the full amount was paid. He relinquished any claim to the house. He took his personal property and his failing business and walked away. The judge approved the divorce. It would be final in 60 days. Simone left the courthouse and stood on the steps in the bright winter sunlight. She felt lighter than she had in years. Diane stood beside her. "How do you feel?" Diane asked. Simone thought about it. "Free," she said. "I feel free." The final court hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late March. It was a formality, really. Brandon had agreed to everything in the settlement. But Georgia law required a final hearing where the divorce decree would be officially granted and any remaining issues addressed. Simone dressed carefully that morning. A gray suit, tailored and professional. Her natural hair styled elegantly. Minimal jewelry, just her grandmother's pearl earrings. She looked successful, composed, untouchable. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd been through hell and come out stronger. Diane met her at the courthouse. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," Simone said. They walked into the courtroom together. Brandon was already there with his lawyer. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His suit was rumpled. He couldn't meet her eyes. His parents sat in the gallery behind him. Patricia looked furious. Gerald looked defeated, older somehow. The heart attack had aged him. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Martinez, called the court to order. She reviewed the case file, flipping through pages of financial documents. She looked up, her expression thoughtful. "This is an unusual case," she said. "I've reviewed all the documentation submitted by both parties." "Mrs. Hayes." "It's Miss Simone Harris, Your Honor," Simone said, using her maiden name. "I'd like to revert to my maiden name as part of this decree." "Miss Harris," the judge corrected. "I've reviewed your financial declarations. I've reviewed the evidence of payments, contributions, and assets. I've also reviewed the correspondence submitted showing the circumstances that led to this divorce. Mr. Hayes, do you dispute any of the facts presented in your wife's, in Ms. Harris's, financial declaration?" Brandon's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client does not dispute the facts. We've agreed to the settlement as presented." "Very well," Judge Martinez said. She looked at Brandon directly. "Mr. Hayes, I want to make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. You're relinquishing all claim to the marital home. You're agreeing to pay Ms. Harris $240,000 for the business investment she made in your company. You're taking responsibility for your portion of the joint credit card debt. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Brandon said quietly. "And you understand that your business is likely to fail if you can't secure additional funding?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you understand that your parents' financial situation, while not directly part of this divorce, has been affected by Ms. Harris's decision to stop paying their mortgage?" "Yes, Your Honor." Brandon's voice was barely audible. Judge Martinez looked at the documentation again. Then she did something unexpected. She looked at Patricia and Gerald in the gallery. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," she said, "please stand." They stood, looking confused and worried. "I want you to hear something," Judge Martinez said. "I'm going to read from the financial records submitted in this case. Over the course of 8 years, Ms. Harris contributed the following to your son's household. Full purchase price of the marital home, $480,000. Full payment of mortgage, property taxes, and homeowner's insurance for 8 years, approximately $320,000. Business investment in your son's company, $200,000. Additional capital injections to cover business losses, approximately $96,000. For a total of $1.096 million. The courtroom was silent. Simone heard Patricia gasp. Additionally, the judge continued, Ms. Harris refinanced your personal mortgage 3 years ago when you were facing foreclosure. She has paid your mortgage for 36 months at $4,000 per month. That's $144,000. She has also paid approximately $42,000 in country club fees, medical expenses, and other costs on your behalf. Her total contribution to your personal finances is approximately $186,000. Gerald sat down heavily. He looked like he might pass out. The combined total that Ms. Harris has contributed to your family over 8 years is approximately $1.28 million, Judge Martinez said. And according to the correspondence in this file, your response to this generosity was to tell her she wasn't good enough for your family, to encourage your son to divorce her, to threaten to make her life miserable if she didn't leave quietly. Is that correct? Patricia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I ask, Judge Martinez said, because I want you to understand what you've done. You've lost someone who was supporting you. You've lost someone who was carrying your entire lifestyle on her back without you even knowing it. You've lost someone who treated you like family even when you treated her like she was beneath you. Patricia found her voice. We didn't know, she said. We had no idea. Brandon never told us. That's not an excuse, Judge Martinez said sharply. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You assumed your son was successful enough to support you. You never asked. You never thanked. You never even considered that someone else might be making your comfortable life possible. That's not ignorance. That's arrogance. The judge turned to Brandon. And you, Mr. Hayes. You let your wife pay for everything while you took credit. You let your parents insult her while she paid their bills. You had an affair while spending her money on your mistress. You planned to divorce her without any acknowledgement of what she'd done for you. Do you have anything to say? Brandon stood there, his face red. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, I didn't understand. You didn't want to understand, Judge Martinez said, because understanding would have meant acknowledging that your wife was more successful than you, that she was carrying you, and that apparently was too much for your ego. She looked at Simone. Ms. Harris, I'm granting your divorce. I'm awarding you the marital home, your business investment repayment, your personal property, and your maiden name. I'm also including in this decree a commendation for your dignity throughout this process. You could have made this ugly. You could have sought revenge. Instead, you simply stopped allowing people to take advantage of you. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Hayes, you have 60 days to vacate the marital home. Your payment plan for the business investment begins next month. If you default, Ms. Harris has the right to pursue further legal action including seizure of business assets. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was over. Simone was divorced. She stood to leave. Brandon reached out to her as she passed. Simone, please, can we talk? I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Simone said calmly. You chose this. You and your parents chose this. Now you live with it. But I didn't know about the money, Brandon said. I didn't know you were paying for everything. If I'd known. You would have done what? Simone asked. Treated me better? Defended me to your parents? Not had an affair? Brandon, you didn't know because you never asked. You never cared. You just spent and never wondered where it came from. That's on you. She walked past him. Patricia tried to intercept her in the hallway. Simone, wait please. We need to talk. We had no idea. Brandon never told us. If we'd known what you were doing for us. You would have what? Simone asked. Treated me like I was good enough? Patricia, the problem wasn't that you didn't know I was paying your bills. The problem was that you thought I wasn't good enough for your family even when you thought Brandon was the one supporting you. You judged me for my background, for my race, for not being from your world. Money wouldn't have changed that. It just would have made you better at hiding your contempt. That's not true, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Simone said. And we both know it. Goodbye, Patricia. I hope you and Gerald figure things out. I really do. But I'm done being your safety net. She walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine. Diane was waiting on the steps. That was intense, Diane said. That was necessary, Simone corrected. They needed to hear it. All of them. They needed to understand what they did. How do you feel? Diane asked. Simone took a deep breath of fresh air. She felt light. Free. Clear. I feel like I just won, she said. And she had. Not because she'd taken anything from them, but because she'd finally taken back what was hers. Her dignity. Her self-respect. Her freedom. She walked down the courthouse steps and into her new life. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Simone stood in her corner office at work and looked out at the city. She'd been promoted 3 weeks ago to Senior Vice President of Operations. The promotion came with a significant raise, a bigger office, and direct reports across 3 departments. She was the youngest SVP in the company's history, and the second black woman to reach that level. Her life had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined when she was married to Brandon. She'd spent the first few months after the divorce just breathing, just existing without the weight of his family's expectations and his betrayal. She'd gone to therapy every week, working through the pain of being deceived, the anger at being dismissed, the grief of losing the life she thought she had. Her therapist, Dr. Williams, had helped her see patterns she'd been ignoring for years. How she'd made herself smaller to fit into Brandon's world. How she'd apologized for her success instead of celebrating it. How she'd let Patricia's cutting comments chip away at her confidence. You spent 8 years trying to be good enough for people who were never going to accept you, Dr. Williams had said during one session. Not because you weren't good enough, but because accepting you would have meant acknowledging their own inadequacies. You were too successful, too independent, too much. And instead of celebrating that, they tried to diminish you. The inside had been painful but freeing. Simone had started rebuilding herself from the inside out. She'd reconnected with friends she'd neglected during her marriage. She joined a book club that met on Thursday evenings, where she discussed novels with women who were smart and funny and supportive. She'd started painting again, a hobby she'd given up because Patricia had called it too messy for their home. She'd traveled. She'd taken that trip to Paris she'd always wanted, spending 10 days wandering museums and cafes and watching the sunset from the Eiffel Tower. She'd gone to Bali for a yoga retreat. She'd visited New Orleans for Jazz Fest. She'd done all the things Brandon had always vetoed because they weren't his style. She'd also done something that surprised her. She'd started a mentorship program at work for young women in business, particularly women of color. She met with them monthly, shared her experiences, helped them navigate corporate politics and imposter syndrome. She gave them the support she wished she'd had when she was starting out. I've made this ugly. You could have sought revenge. Instead, you simply stopped allowing people to take advantage of you. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Hayes, you have 60 days to vacate the marital home. Your payment plan for the business investment begins next month. If you default, Ms. Harris has the right to pursue further legal action including seizure of business assets. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was over. Simone was divorced. She stood to leave. Brandon reached out to her as she passed. Simone, please, can we talk? I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Simone said calmly. You chose this. You and your parents chose this. Now you live with it. But I didn't know about the money, Brandon said. I didn't know you were paying for everything. If I'd known. You would have done what? Simone asked. Treated me better? Defended me to your parents? Not had an affair? Brandon, you didn't know because you never asked. You never cared. You just spent and never wondered where it came from. That's on you. She walked past him. Patricia tried to intercept her in the hallway. Simone, wait please. We need to talk. We had no idea. Brandon never told us. If we'd known what you were doing for us. You would have what? Simone asked. Treated me like I was good enough? Patricia, the problem wasn't that you didn't know I was paying your bills. The problem was that you thought I wasn't good enough for your family even when you thought Brandon was the one supporting you. You judged me for my background. For my race. For not being from your world. Money wouldn't have changed that. It just would have made you better at hiding your contempt. That's not true, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Simone said. And we both know it. Goodbye, Patricia. I hope you and Gerald figure things out. I really do. But I'm done being your safety net. She walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine. Diane was waiting on the steps. That was intense, Diane said. That was necessary, Simone corrected. They needed to hear it. All of them. They needed to understand what they did. How do you feel? Diane asked. Simone took a deep breath of fresh air. She felt light. Free. Clear. I feel like I just won, she said. And she had. Not because she'd taken anything from them, but because she'd finally taken back what was hers. Her dignity, her self-respect, her freedom. She walked down the courthouse steps and into her new life. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Simone stood in her corner office at work and looked out at the city. She'd been promoted 3 weeks ago to Senior Vice President of Operations. The promotion came with a significant raise, a bigger office, and direct reports across 3 departments. She was the youngest SVP in the company's history, and the second black woman to reach that level. Her life had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined when she was married to Brandon. She'd spent the first few months after the divorce just breathing, just existing without the weight of his family's expectations and his betrayal. She'd gone to therapy every week, working through the pain of being deceived, the anger at being dismissed, the grief of losing the life she'd thought she had. Her therapist, Dr. Williams, had helped her see patterns she'd been ignoring for years. How she'd made herself smaller to fit into Brandon's world. How she'd apologized for her success instead of celebrating it. How she'd let Patricia's cutting comments chip away at her confidence. You spent 8 years trying to be good enough for people who were never going to accept you, Dr. Williams had said during one session. Not because you weren't good enough, but because accepting you would have meant acknowledging their own inadequacies. You were too successful, too independent, too much. And instead of celebrating that, they tried to diminish you. The inside had been painful but freeing. Simone had started rebuilding herself from the inside out. She'd reconnected with friends she'd neglected during her marriage. She joined a book club that met on Thursday evenings, where she discussed novels with women who were smart and funny and supportive. She'd started painting again, a hobby she'd given up because Patricia had called it too messy for their home. She traveled. She'd taken that trip to Paris she'd always wanted, spending 10 days wandering museums and cafes and watching the sunset from the Eiffel Tower. She'd gone to Bali for a yoga retreat. She'd visited New Orleans for Jazz Fest. She'd done all the things Brandon had always vetoed because they weren't his style. She'd also done something that surprised her. She'd started a mentorship program at work for young women in business, particularly women of color. She met with them monthly, shared her experiences, helped them navigate corporate politics and imposter syndrome. She gave them the support she wished she'd had when she was starting out. "You're glowing," her assistant Jennifer said, bringing in her afternoon coffee. "Seriously? You look 10 years younger than you did a year ago." Simone laughed. "I feel 10 years younger. Turns out, getting rid of dead weight will do that to you." "Speaking of which," Jennifer said with a mischievous smile, "there's someone in the lobby asking for you. A Mr. Jerome Coleman. Says he met you at the Thompson Charity Gala last month. He doesn't have an appointment, but he seems nice. Security says he has a legitimate reason for being in the building. He's here meeting with the facilities team about a renovation project." Simone felt her pulse quicken. Jerome Coleman. She remembered him. Tall, handsome, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He was an architect, she'd learned during their brief conversation at the gala. They talked for maybe 20 minutes about city planning and sustainable design before they'd been pulled in different directions by other guests. She'd thought about him several times since then, wondered if he'd call. "Send him up," Simone said, trying to sound casual. 5 minutes later, Jerome walked into her office. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly, and he carried a portfolio case. He smiled when he saw her, and Simone felt something flutter in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. "Miss Harris," he said. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I'm here on business, but when I saw your company name in the directory, I thought I'd take a chance and see if you were available for a quick hello." "It's Simone," she said. "And you're not interrupting at all. Please sit." They talked for 30 minutes. He was working on a renovation project for her company's warehouse facility across town. He asked about her work and she found herself opening up about the promotion, the mentorship program, the changes in her life. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions, making her laugh with observations about corporate culture and office design. "I have to ask," he said finally. "That night at the gala you mentioned you'd recently made some big life changes. You seem so, I don't know, clear about what you wanted. It stayed with me. What was it? The life change, I mean. If you don't mind me asking." Simone hesitated, then decided honesty was better. "I got divorced. Finalized about 6 months ago. It was a long time coming. I was married to someone who didn't see my value, who let his family treat me badly, who thought I was lucky to be with him. Leaving him was the hardest and best thing I've ever done." Jerome nodded slowly. "I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm also glad you got out." Life's too short to spend it with people who don't appreciate you. Speaking from experience? Simone asked. Divorced 2 years ago, Jerome admitted. No kids, thankfully. She wanted a husband who'd be okay with her career always coming first, who'd move wherever her job took her, who'd basically be an accessory to her life. I wanted a partner. Turns out, those weren't compatible. I'm sorry, Simone said. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. Taught me what I don't want in a relationship. Now I know what I'm looking for. He paused. Speaking of which, would you like to have coffee sometime? Not a business meeting. Just coffee. No pressure. Simone felt her heart race. She wanted to say yes, but part of her was scared. She'd been so wrong about Brandon. How could she trust her judgment now? Then she remembered what Dr. Williams had said. You weren't wrong about Brandon. You saw red flags and ignored them because you wanted the marriage to work. Trust yourself. But also, trust yourself to walk away if you see those flags again. I'd like that, Simone said. Coffee sounds nice. They exchanged numbers. Jerome left with a promise to call her soon. Simone sat at her desk after he left, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there were good men out there who would see her for who she really was and value that. That evening she met her friend Tasha for dinner. Tasha had been her best friend in college, and they'd reconnected after the divorce. Tasha was a lawyer at a different firm than Diane, brilliant and funny and fiercely loyal. You're smiling, Tasha observed over their appetizers. Like really smiling. What happened? Simone told her about Jerome. About the gala, the unexpected office visit, the coffee invitation. Tasha listened, grinning. Girl, this is good, Tasha said. You're ready? I know you've been scared, but you're ready to date again. Am I? Simone asked. What if I make the same mistakes? What if I pick another Brandon? You won't, Tasha said firmly. Because you're not the same woman who married Brandon. You know yourself better now. You know your worth. You know what you won't tolerate. And you know how to walk away if something doesn't feel right. Simone nodded. Tasha was right. She wasn't the same person anymore. The divorce had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. She'd learned to trust her instincts again. She'd learned to value herself. She'd learned that she didn't need anyone to complete her. She was already complete. Besides, Tasha added with a smirk, from what you've told me about Jerome, he sounds nothing like Brandon. He has his own career. He was honest about his divorce. He asked you to coffee, not to some expensive restaurant where he could show off. And he listened to you talk about your work without trying to compete or diminish it. That's already leagues better. The following week, Jerome called. They met for coffee at a small shop near Piedmont Park. They talked for 3 hours. About architecture and business. About their families and their childhoods. About their divorces and what they'd learned. About their dreams for the future. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't name drop or talk about his salary or his connections. He just talked to her like she was interesting, like her opinions mattered, like he actually wanted to know her. When they left the coffee shop, he walked her to her car. I'd like to see you again, he said. Is that okay? That's more than okay, Simone said. They started dating slowly. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates. Dinner dates turned into museum visits and long walks through the city. Jerome was easy to be with. He was confident without being arrogant. He was successful without needing to prove it. He treated service workers with respect, remembered her friends' names when she mentioned them, and never once made her feel like she should dim her light so he could shine brighter. 3 months into dating, he met her friends at Tasha's birthday party. They approved immediately. He's good people, Tasha whispered to Simone while Jerome was telling a funny story about a client meeting gone wrong. Don't let this one go. Simone didn't plan to. For the first time in years, she felt like she was building something real. Something healthy. Something based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not on trying to fit herself into someone else's expectations. Meanwhile, she'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Brandon and Brittany had broken up. Apparently, once Brandon lost his business and his money, Brittany had decided he wasn't worth her time. Brandon had moved back in with his parents, who'd lost their house and were now living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Gerald's health was deteriorating. Patricia had taken a job at a department store to make ends meet. Simone felt a pang of sympathy but no guilt. She'd given them every chance to treat her right. They'd chosen differently. Now they were living with those choices. She was living with her choices too. But her choices had led her to freedom, success, and the beginning of something beautiful with someone who actually saw her value. She was happy. truly genuinely happy. And she'd done it all on her own terms. The relationship with Jerome deepened over the next several months. They fell into an easy rhythm. Dinners at new restaurants, weekend trips to the mountains, quiet evenings at each other's apartments watching movies and talking until midnight. Jerome never tried to rush things. He never pressured her. He was patient and present and real in ways Brandon had never been. "My parents want to meet you," Jerome said one evening as they cooked dinner together in her apartment. He was making his grandmother's famous jerk chicken while she prepared rice and plantains. The kitchen smelled amazing. Simone felt her stomach tighten. Meeting parents. That was a big step. After her experience with Patricia and Gerald, the thought of meeting someone's family made her anxious. Jerome noticed her expression. He put down the spoon he was holding and took her hands. "Hey," he said gently. "I know that's loaded for you after everything with Brandon's family, but my parents aren't like that. They're going to love you because I love you. And because you're amazing." Simone blinked. "You love me?" Jerome smiled. "Is that okay? I know we haven't said it yet. But yes, Simone. I love you. I love your strength and your intelligence and your kindness. I love how you light up when you talk about your mentorship program. I love that you still paint even though you're terrible at it." "Hey." Simone laughed through sudden tears. "I'm not terrible." "You kind of are," Jerome said, still smiling. "But I love that you do it anyway because it makes you happy. I love everything about you. And I'm not going anywhere." Simone kissed him. "I love you too," she said. "And okay, I'll meet your parents. But if they say anything about me not being good enough, I'm out." "They won't," Jerome promised. "But if they did, I'd be out with you. That's the difference. You're my partner. We're a team. Nobody gets to disrespect you. Not my parents. Not anybody." 2 weeks later, they drove to Jerome's parents' house in Decatur. His mother, Angela, met them at the door with a huge smile and an immediate hug for Simone. "Oh, we've been so excited to meet you. Jerome talks about you constantly. Come in, come in." The house was warm and welcoming, filled with family photos and the smell of home cooking. Jerome's father, Robert, was a retired teacher who spent his time volunteering at the community center. His mother was a nurse who still worked part-time at the local hospital. They were kind and funny and genuinely interested in Simone's life. Over dinner, Angela asked about Simone's work. She listened with real interest as Simone described her role at the company, the mentorship program, her career goals. She didn't compare her to other women. She didn't suggest Simone might want to scale back for Jerome's sake. She just celebrated Simone's success. "Jerome told us you went through a difficult divorce," Robert said gently. "That takes courage. Starting over. Not many people have that strength." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," Simone said honestly. "But it was necessary. I was in a situation where I wasn't valued, where I was made to feel small. I couldn't stay." "Good," Angela said firmly. "A woman should never make herself small for anyone. My mother used to say that a partner should be a spotlight, not a shadow. They should highlight your best qualities, not try to hide them." Simone felt tears prick her eyes. "I wish I'd known your mother. She would have loved you," Angela said. "And for what it's worth, we love you too. Anyone who makes our son this happy is good people in our book." On the drive home, Simone leaned her head on Jerome's shoulder. "Your parents are wonderful," she said. "They are," Jerome agreed. "And they meant what they said. They think you're great. Which you are." "This is so different from last time," Simone said quietly. "With Brandon's family, I always felt like I was auditioning. Like I had to prove I was worthy of being there. With your parents, I just felt welcomed." "That's how it should be," Jerome said. "Family should be a soft place to land, not a gauntlet to run through." Simone thought about that. About how she'd spent 8 years running through a gauntlet, trying to jump high enough and run fast enough to meet impossible standards. And how exhausting that had been. How soul-crushing. Now she had this. Jerome, who loved her as she was. His parents, who welcomed her without conditions. Her friends, who supported her dreams. Her career, which was thriving. Her freedom, which she'd fought so hard to reclaim. She'd rebuilt her life. Not just rebuilt, she'd built something better than what she'd had before. Something authentic. Something that honored who she really was instead of who she thought she should be. Around this time, she got an unexpected email from an old college friend, Monica. They'd been close once but had drifted apart. The email said Monica had heard about Simone's divorce from mutual friends and wanted to reconnect. They met for lunch. Monica was as warm and funny as Simone remembered. They caught up on the years they'd missed, laughing about old memories and shared adventures from their college days. I heard bits and pieces about what happened with Brandon, Monica said carefully. His family didn't know you were supporting them? That's wild. They didn't want to know, Simone said. They made assumptions about who had the power and the money. They assumed it was Brandon because that fit their worldview better. They never looked at the reality. And now? Monica asked. Simone thought about what she'd heard through the grapevine. Brandon was working at a mid-level management job at an insurance company, making a fraction of what he'd made with his consulting business. He was still living with his parents in their tiny apartment. Patricia had had to give up all her social pretensions and work full-time. Gerald's medical bills were crushing them. Now they're struggling, Simone said. And I'm thriving. Which is exactly how it should be. I'm not responsible for their comfort anymore. They made their choices. They're living with the consequences. Do you ever feel guilty? Monica asked. Sometimes, Simone admitted. Late at night when I can't sleep. I think about Patricia working retail at 62 years old. I think about Gerald's heart condition. I think about how they lost everything. And part of me feels bad. But, Monica prompted. But then I remember Saturday night at their house. When they sat me down and told me I wasn't good enough. When they threatened to make my life miserable if I didn't leave quietly. When they talked about me like I was garbage they needed to take out. And I remember that I gave them everything and it still wasn't enough. So no, I don't feel guilty enough to do anything about it. They made their bed. They can sleep in it. Monica raised her glass of wine. To women who know their worth, she said. Simone clinked her glass against Monica's. To women who refuse to be diminished. That night, Simone got home to her apartment to find Jerome waiting in the lobby with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. Surprise, he said. I know you had a long day. Thought you might want dinner and a movie. They ate on her couch, her feet in his lap, watching a documentary about urban architecture that Jerome had been wanting to see. It was perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary, and perfectly wonderful. This was what love was supposed to be, Simone thought. Easy, comfortable, supportive. Two people building something together without one person having to carry all the weight. What are you thinking about? Jerome asked, noticing her contemplative expression. How happy I am, Simone said honestly. How different my life is now. How grateful I am that I found the strength to leave. I'm grateful too, Jerome said. Because if you hadn't left, I never would have met you. And that would have been a tragedy. Simone laughed. Smooth talker. Just honest, Jerome said. He pulled her closer. I mean it, Simone. You're the best thing in my life. And I want to keep building this with you. No pressure. No timeline. Just us figuring it out together. Together, Simone echoed. I like the sound of that. For the first time in her adult life, Simone felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not trying to fit into someone else's vision of what her life should look like. Not apologizing for her success or dimming her light or making herself smaller. Just being herself. Fully, completely, unapologetically herself. And it was glorious. 1 year after her divorce was finalized, Simone stood on a beach in Santorini, Greece, watching the sun set over the Aegean Sea. The sky was painted in shades of pink and purple and gold, the water sparkling like diamonds. Behind her, workers were setting up chairs and an arch of flowers for tomorrow's ceremony. She was getting married. To Jerome. In 3 days they'd exchange vows on this beach with 40 of their closest friends and family present. It was nothing like her first wedding, which had been a huge affair at Patricia's insistence, with 300 guests and six-figure expenses and so much stress that Simone had barely enjoyed any of it. This wedding was different. Intimate. Personal. Perfect. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tasha. We just landed. Can't wait to see you. Where's the hotel? Simone smiled and texted back directions. Tasha, Monica, and 3 other close friends were arriving tonight. Jerome's parents and siblings would arrive tomorrow. Everyone she loved, everyone who'd supported her through the divorce and the rebuilding, would be here to celebrate this new beginning. Her career had continued to soar. 2 months ago, she'd been approached by a Fortune 500 company with an offer to be their chief operating officer. The salary was staggering. The opportunity was incredible. But more than that, it felt like validation. Like proof that she'd always been good enough, successful enough, worthy enough. Brandon's family had been wrong about her. Dead wrong. She'd accepted the position. She'd start after she and Jerome returned from their honeymoon in Italy. Jerome walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Beautiful, he said. It is, Simone agreed, watching the sunset. I meant you, Jerome said, kissing her neck. The sunset's nice too, though. Simone turned in his arms and kissed him properly. "Smooth talker," she said, echoing her familiar refrain. "Just honest," he said, echoing his familiar response. They stood there together as the sun dipped below the horizon. Simone thought about the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal, the pain, the divorce, the slow, difficult work of rebuilding herself from the inside out. The courage it had taken to be vulnerable again, to risk her heart again, to trust someone new. It had been worth it. All of it. Because it had led her here. "I have something to tell you," Jerome said. "I ran into someone at the airport in Athens. Someone you used to know." Simone tensed. "Who?" "Brandon," Jerome said gently. "He was there for a business conference. We ended up at the same gate during my layover. He recognized me from the photos you'd shown him when we started dating. We talked briefly." Simone's heart started racing. "What did he say?" "He asked about you. Asked if you were happy. I told him you were. I told him we were getting married." He looked. Jerome paused, searching for words. "Defeated," said. "He said to tell you he was sorry. That he understood now what he'd lost. That he hopes you have a beautiful life." Simone was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked, "And what did you say?" "I said thank you for the well wishes. And that you already have a beautiful life. That you built it yourself after you stopped letting people diminish you. That you're exactly where you're supposed to be." "How did he look?" Simone asked. She was surprised to find she genuinely wanted to know. "Tired," Jerome said honestly. "Older than his years. Like someone who's been struggling for a while. His suit wasn't expensive. He mentioned he was traveling on a budget because his company was sending him to pitch potential clients. I got the sense things aren't going well for him." Simone thought about that. About Brandon hustling for clients, traveling alone, wearing cheaper suits, knowing that the life he'd had was gone and never coming back. She waited for satisfaction to bloom in her chest. For vindication. For the sweet taste of revenge. Instead she felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No bitterness. Just a distant, abstract acknowledgement that Brandon was facing consequences and that those consequences had nothing to do with her anymore. "I don't hate him," she said quietly. "Isn't that weird? After everything he did, everything his family did, I just don't feel anything about him. He's just someone I used to know who made bad choices." "That's not weird," Jerome said. "That's healing. That's what happens when you move on completely. He can't hurt you anymore because you don't give him that power." "I'm happy he apologized," Simone said. "I hope he learned something from all this. I hope he treats the next woman in his life better than he treated me. But I don't need his apology to be okay. I'm okay with or without it." "That's my girl," Jerome said softly. The next 3 days were a blur of joy. Her friends arrived and filled her villa with laughter and champagne and stories. Jerome's family embraced her like she'd always been one of them. The wedding rehearsal was chaotic and fun. The rehearsal dinner featured Greek food and dancing and toasts that made everyone cry and laugh. On the morning of the wedding, Simone woke up in her villa with her bridesmaids around her. They helped her get ready, zipping up her dress, a simple, elegant white gown that made her feel beautiful, and fixing her hair and makeup. Tasha handed her a small box. "Something old?" Tasha said. Simone opened it to find her grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she'd worn at her first wedding. She started to cry. "Don't you dare," Monica said, wielding a tissue. "You'll ruin your makeup. Your grandmother would want you to wear it today. She'd be so proud of you, of how you survived, of how you rebuilt, of how you found real love." Simone put on the necklace. "She would be proud," she said. "She always told me never to depend on anyone for my happiness, that I had to build it myself. It took me too long to learn that lesson, but I learned it. And now you're adding to it," Tasha said. "You built yourself. Now you're choosing to share that with someone who deserves it. That's the whole point. Not needing someone, but choosing them anyway." The ceremony was perfect. The beach, the flowers, the sunset timing. Jerome's eyes filled with tears when he saw Simone walking toward him. His vows talked about partnership and respect and building a life where both of them could shine. Simone's vows talked about second chances and finding courage and choosing love that uplifts instead of diminishes. When they kissed, their friends and family erupted in cheers. The photographer captured it all. The joy on their faces, the tears streaming down Angela's cheeks, the way Robert clapped Jerome on the back, the pure happiness radiating from everyone present. At the reception, Simone danced with her friends. She danced with Jerome's father. She danced with Jerome until her feet hurt and her face ached from smiling. She felt light, free, full. During a quiet moment, she stepped away to the edge of the reception area and looked out at the dark sea. Jerome found her there. "You good?" he asked. "I'm perfect," Simone said. "I was just thinking about where I was a year ago. Broken, angry, scared. And look where I am now. Married to an amazing man. Starting a dream job. Surrounded by people who love me. It's like a different life." "It is a different life," Jerome said. "The one you deserve. The one you always deserved but nobody saw." "You see it?" Simone said. "Of course I do," Jerome said. "How could I not? You're extraordinary, Simone. You always have been. I'm just lucky you chose me." "We chose each other," Simone corrected. "We did," Jerome agreed. He pulled her close. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice." "I won't," Simone said with certainty. "This is what love is supposed to feel like. Easy. Honest. Safe. This is what I was looking for all along. I just had to learn my worth before I could find it." They stood there together, husband and wife, looking out at the sea under a sky full of stars. Somewhere back in the States, Brandon was struggling with his reduced circumstances. Patricia was working a job she never thought she'd have to work. Gerald was managing his health problems on a tight budget. Simone had once funded their comfortable lives. She'd once absorbed their insults and their dismissal because she'd thought family meant sacrifice. She'd once made herself small so they could feel big. Now she stood tall. She stood proud. She stood happy. And she'd done it all on her own terms, rebuilding from the ashes of betrayal into something stronger and more beautiful than before. The best revenge, she'd learned, wasn't destruction. It was indifference. It was building a life so full of joy and success and genuine love that the people who'd hurt her became irrelevant. Became footnotes. Became cautionary tales she might tell someday about the importance of knowing your worth. She'd won. Not by bringing them down, but by rising so high they couldn't reach her anymore. "Come on," Jerome said, tugging her hand. "They're about to cut the cake. And I know how much you love cake." Simone laughed and let him lead her back to the celebration. To their friends. To their family. To their future. She'd been broken. She'd been dismissed. She'd been told she wasn't enough. And she'd proven every single one of them wrong. Not for them. Not to show them. But for herself. She was enough. She'd always been enough. She just needed to believe it. And now she did.